Hello and welcome again to Design Practice 2 Articulate. This online lecture will run you through an overview of the tasks that you need to do for Assessment 4 Materiality. This assessment is worth 20% and it's due in week 10. So for this assessment, what we're going to be doing is moving from form, which you've looked at in the last assessment, into a detailed understanding of materiality and its relationship to light. And as I talked about in the week 7 lecture, materiality and light are a great way of experimenting with the atmosphere or the kind of mood of your space, again, which relates very much to a psychological response or an emotional response to a physical space. So how do we communicate atmosphere for our week 10 assessment task and generally as an interior architect? So what do you actually need to submit for this assessment? You'll need to do a design statement referring directly to materiality in relation to your bigger design ideas. You'll need to do a series of sectional perspective drawings, which I'll talk about in another lecture. You'll bring in your 1 to 50 form model from week 8, unless there have been any major changes. And you'll also do a series of material palettes, which is talked about in another lecture. And then, like the other assessments, you'll be doing process work in relation to materiality. So this can be research, in-class workshop tasks, sketches, models, notes, precedents, etc., etc. So like the other assessment tasks, the intent of these components is to 1, communicate to us your idea and your thinking. 2, to communicate your material proposal. So that's very different to the last assessment, which was about communicating your spatial proposal. And 3, to communicate your process work and the development of your ideas that have led to this material proposal. Again, I'd ask you to read the course outline and to go to Assessment 4 Materiality to read the specifics of the task. Based on your feedback, there is a slight adjustment to the work required. So that can be seen on Moodle and the text is in red. So you'll see the changes there. We do want you to remember that, again, this is not an in-house presentation, this is an external presentation. So imagine that you're presenting this to a client. So you need to kind of imagine that this client may have never seen this project. Things need to be very clear, and beyond being clear, they need to be very evocative. So you really need to sell your scheme and sell the core ideas, sell the materials that you've chosen so that you can really successfully pitch the idea to the client. What do we need to show for this assessment task? There are fewer elements in this assessment because we're really starting to compile and to summate all of the work that you've done to this point in time. So the first component is an A2 panel that will show your perspectives, your material palette, and your design statement. The second component is the form model at 1 to 50, which should be on a plinth. You can reuse this from week 8 if there have not been any major changes. If you are changing your scheme quite dramatically, we'd like to see that reflected in the model. And then finally, your process work. So that will be a collection of your 2D work stacked and of your 3D models put onto a plinth. Verbal presentation, again, we're starting to get into a bit of a rhythm here, so this is the same as the last assessments. We'll have 3-minute student presentation and 5-minute tutor feedback, and then 2-minute changeover. What do I talk about? Again, same as last assessment. The first thing we'd like you to introduce is your design idea. For this task, we'd like you to talk about your design ideas surrounding materiality and how your research and experimentation has led you to this idea. The second component we'd like you to talk about is your material proposal. So we want to know less about, well, this space is here and this space is here and there's a doorway here and an opening here. We really want to know, well, this space is this form and it's going to have this material expression. And then this changes when I move into the next space. And light is going to interact with materials in this way. And this is how I want people to feel in the space. And then finally, we'd like you to reflect. So think about, well, what really worked, do you think? What didn't work? And what do you want to work on now in looking forward to the next assessment task? What are you being assessed on? The key things that you're being assessed on are your expression of materiality, light, and visual communication. Second to that is creative risk and design ideas. So put your energy into the elements that we are focusing on for the assessment task. You'll be assessed by your tutor. Your peer will fill out a checklist, and then all of the tutors and myself will do a parity at the end of the day. The day will run in the same way as the past assessment tasks, so we'll have 12:30 to 1 o'clock pin-up, 1 o'clock sign-in cut-off, presentations from 1:15 until 4, staff parity from 4 until 4:35, and then 5:30 to 6 we'll wrap up and pick up your work, and we'll do post-it notes on the really exemplary work again. Digital submission will be the following day by midnight. So there were a few of you that did miss that deadline. There will be a penalty for this task if you do not meet that deadline. So this time you must submit by 12 midnight the following day. And the idea of this task is, yes, for us to assess you on whether you have kind of met the learning outcomes of the course, but also for you to reflect on your own and others' work as a way of moving forward to the next assessment task and to second year. So I think it's really important to I know you're exhausted, but to walk around, have a look at other people's work, particularly at the end of the day, have a look at work that has a post-it note on it and compare it to your own work and think, okay, well, what do I need to work on for the next assessment task? It's hard to nail everything in one go, but I think it's really important to have a look around as a way of thinking about your future work and what you might need to improve and the elements that you're doing really well.